This is going to be my first video going up on my channel. Well, main video, anyways. And this video has to do with the Miller-Urey experiment and some things that people just have seemed to overlook in recent and past years. So I currently am reading off of one of my lists that I've put together with all of the main amino acids that were basically created in the process that was done in the Miller-Urey experiment. And we're going to start off with glycolic acid, which is a relatively simple amino acid and is one of the many that they found, but it is also in one of the highest quantities that they actually found. Glycolic acid in this scenario is interesting for the fact that, one, it's found in most sugar crops, which would mean that it does have some biological features just besides being an amino acid. And the main point of all these amino acids that you can put together is that amino acids are needed to create proteins. And proteins are only found in living things. And the Miller-Urey experiment basically proved that we could have just evolved from the simple elements that were already here so many billion years ago. So, again, starting off at glycolic acid, sugar crops. So, obviously, we didn't start off with just sugar crops in an evolutionary standpoint. We started off with very, very simple things. And the very first simple things were pretty much just very similarly related to bacteria and protists. So, whether they have this or not is debatable. The main part we're looking at is sugar crops because it's a biological feature. Now, going on to the next one, we will be looking at glycine, which is also another amino acid, which is all they found in there, except for one, that is, which I will go over at the end of this video. So, glycine is the simplest amino acid that can possibly be made. And the reason this is interesting is because obviously we wouldn't have started out like we are now. Going way back to the very first organisms, they would have had very, very simple amino acids and everything, because they obviously were the first organisms. So that is one of the main points of this. Not to mention it is also a proteinogenic amino acid, which there are very few of. Well, very few types, that is. Now, there is another amino acid that we will be going over, which is called sarcosine. And sarcosine is metabolized to glycine by a protein, or as most people put it, as an enzyme, which is not a very more common term anymore, but this is important to note when we go back to the end of the video. Now, we are going to look at another amino acid called alanine, and alanine is an amino acid used in the biosynthesis of proteins. So, obviously it's used to make proteins, but another thing about this alanine amino acid is that it is also very simple. It is only made from 3 different elements, which is amazing, really, because it's just at the core of what we are. So looking at this, we should be able to start connecting things, seeing that everything for these simple organisms was very simple, like I had stated earlier. But now we are putting it together with what they could have been made of. Well, what their proteins could have been made of. So, another amino acid, well, a chemical compound that was found within their testing area was propionic acid. And it's a naturally occurring carboxylic acid. But this is pretty advanced. And what is more interesting in this is that this propionic acid is a main ingredient in what creates body odor. And obviously I'm not saying that, oh, we were first organisms or anything like that. I'm saying that this is important to see as it's a biological feature that we contain now, seeing as it's from as far back as we could generate this experiment from. So that is why I bring that up. Now, our final topic of this video is urea. Urea, as many people know, comes out of our urine, but urea is the breakdown of proteins. And in order for urea to be created, that means there has to be proteins at some point. And this goes back to the, I believe it's, can't remember, sarcosine. Is metabolized, like I said, by glycine, by an enzyme. And it's important to remember that enzyme is an out-of-date word that means protein. So, looking at proteins, they are only found in living things. So seeing as these proteins were created, well, they didn't find the evidence of the proteins directly. They found them indirectly. They found the leftover, which was the urea, which can only be created by the breakdown of proteins. This is what is important to see because proteins are only found in biological beings. So if we're putting all of this together, we have plant amino acids that are found in mainly plants, biological amino acids of all types, and then we have sarcosine, which is metabolized to glycine, which can only be done by using a specific protein. So putting all of this together, we can see that there was most likely an attempt at creating an organism strictly from just a few chemicals that some chemists decided to use because they were what were most likely to be on the primitive Earth. Now, I only covered a very little amount of the chemicals that are actually, or the amino acids and chemicals that are found in this experiment. So it's important to realize that we very well could have had an organism created from this. Maybe not at that specific time, because it was still building, but if we had given it time, we could have had one. So I'm going to leave everyone on this note that we could have created an organism if we had given ourselves enough time.